أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي Selamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So inshallah we will continue with the third droplet.
Third droplet. If you wish, come. Let us go to Arabian Peninsula, to the era of bliss. In our imaginations, we shall see him at his duties and visit him. Look, we see a person distinguished by his fine character and beautiful form. In his hand is a miraculous book, and on his tongue a truthful address. He is delivering a pre-eternal sermon to all mankind, indeed, to man, jinn, and the angels, and to all beings. He solves and expounds the strange riddle of the mystery of the world's creation. He discovers and solves the abstruse talisman, which is the mystery of the universe, and he provides convincing and satisfying answers to the three awesome and difficult questions that are asked of all beings and have always bewildered and occupied minds. Where do you come from? What are you doing here? What is your destination? Fourth droplet. See, he spreads such a light of truth that if you look at the universe as being outside the luminous sphere of his truth and guidance, you see it to be like a place of general mourning, and being strangers to one another and hostile, and inanimate beings to be like ghastly corpses, and living creatures like orphans weeping at the blows of death and separation. Now look, through the light he spreads, that place of universal mourning has been transformed into a place where God's names and praises are recited in joy and ecstasy. The foreign, hostile beings have become friends and brothers, while the dumb, dead, inanimate creatures have all become familiar officials and docile servants. And the weeping, complaining orphans are seen to be either reciting God's names and praises or offering thanks at being released from their duties.
So these are two new aspects of prophethood. So we already studied different aspects. For instance, in the first droplet, in addition to some other things, we saw how he and his message encompasses entire creation, past, present, future. The author gave us a kind of new definition of prophethood, not only limited to a certain person lived at a certain time, but he took prophethood as a living tree with roots reaching to past, starting from the first creation, first the human being, maybe, and then its fruits reaching to us in our present time and also future. And in the second droplet, we see some other aspects as well, as certain things affirming his messengership, affirming his being a proof of divine unity. And then in this third droplet, he does something interesting. He says, if you wish, come, let us go to Arabian Peninsula, to the era of bliss. Let us go to the Arabian Peninsula, to the era of bliss. In our imaginations, we shall see him at his duties and visit him. Again, in our imaginations, we shall see him at his duties and visit him. Look, we see a person distinguished by his fine character and beautiful form. In his hand is a miraculous book, and on his tongue a truthful address. he is delivering a pre-eternal sermon to all mankind, indeed, to man, jinn, and the angels, and to all beings. So what he's trying to do here, it calls us, imagine him in his era, where he lived. And actually the funny part, the way he describes, I assume he does it intentionally, it's not accurate in terms of like historical facts. He says in his hand is a miraculous book, and on his tongue a truthful address. He is delivering a pre-eternal sermon to all mankind, and to man, jinn, and the angels, and to all beings. So if you want to, like, if we force ourselves to take it very literal, we know that the book was compiled way after him. Like, he didn't have a book in his hand. So obviously he's not talking about like a certain or maybe very accurate historical fact, although he's talking from a historical perspective. I'm not saying this because it's important, like when the book was compiled or whatever. I'm just saying that, he's describing a picture which fits to our imagination, like to put people living at this in this century, because we have the book. And when I try to imagine him, I would imagine him with the book. So it's more about my imagination, how I perceive him, rather than what he really did at that time. I don't know, I might be going too far or talking nonsense, but this is how I felt.
So it's a figurative speech, is that what you're saying?
It is kind of figurative speech, but still, from a historical perspective, it's like interesting. And he says, let us go to Arabian Peninsula, to the era of bliss. So he somehow restricts our imagination to a certain location and time, but still, it's our imagination.
So obviously the book refers to the revelation and the message, right? Because without the message, why would you need a messenger?
Yeah.
Without them, like, if there's no message, you wouldn't need a messenger. So the book, the miraculous book, must refer to the revelation, and whatever the message comes, like, in the revelation. And like his tongue truthful address, the message comes to him, takes some sort of shape and form, and delivered to the people, explaining the truths of this universe. And the message is so comprehensive that he's delivering a pre-eternal sermon to all mankind, indeed to man, jinn, and angels, and to all beings. So, like, it is not usual, like, when you say, like, messenger, like, I personally, I think that it is just, like, delivered to the human beings. But here, he just doesn't live with the human beings or mankind. He brings the jinns, angels, and all beings, like, into the equation. So it's much more like comprehensive or universal than we think. I was talking to, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to Brother Ali. I don't even remember what the subject was, but like something that said that was kind of, we always talk about it, but like the way that he said it, like, it was kind of eye-opening. When, like, usually we say ummet, right? Like, we are like the ummah of Prophet Muhammad. And when we say that, we usually like refer to a certain group of people who accept him as a prophet. But like here, especially in this context, he's a messenger that came for, or he had a pre-eternal sermon that delivers to like all mankind jinn. And Allah said like his ummah actually must be somehow related to all mankind, because if he is the ultimate, the seal of the messengerhood, the message is so comprehensive that he must be, the rest, like all of mankind, must be fall into somewhere in between, like his ummah. Because we were talking about, like, I remember now what the context was, because we were talking about afterlife, paradise and hell, and some like hadiths, like there are some hadiths that like describing the hell in a figurative way, in a way that like anyone who has it like an atom of belief in his heart eventually will be delivered from the hellfire. So that was the context that you were talking about. So like I think that understanding like kind of goes along with this paragraph.
To all mankind, to man, jinn, and the angels part, and to all beings.
Yeah. So we tend to restrict that, like our understanding of ummah, our understanding of prophet or prophethood, to certain like boundaries. But here he talks about something much more universal.
The portrayal of prophet also is interesting. It says, in his hand is a miraculous book, and on his tongue a truthful address. So I don't know if that was his intention, the author's intention, but what it tells me is you cannot separate the scripture, the message it carries, and the messenger. You cannot just talk about the message by itself, or you cannot just talk about the messenger by itself, or the scripture by itself. Like they come together. Because as I said, like he didn't even have the book. Right? But still he says in his hand the miraculous book.
So if there is no addressee of any speech, then speech doesn't take place.
If there is no address, yes, that's true. And also from our perspective, the existence of the scripture also defines a reference point for us. Because the message is always so, how to say, like so liquid. Like from person to person it will change dramatically. From one era to another era it will change dramatically. Yes, like message should change from one person to another, but still we need a reference point, right, to find the common ground. And scripture, existence of a scripture facilitates that. You read the same scripture, even though you get a different message, still you read the same scripture. Accepting that the message I receive is coming from one source. It's not something I made up. It's not something I heard from a great philosopher or thinker. It's a message as transferred or conveyed by the scripture. And also messenger, the human side of the message. How am I interacting with the message? So I guess it's important, like it's a man carrying a book and talking, conveying a message. Any comments, questions from our online participants?
Yeah, thank you.
He solves and expounds the strange riddle of the mystery of the world's creation. He solves and expounds. What does it mean?
I don't know.
Okay, sure. So, sure. Explain. Explain, okay. He solves and expounds the strange riddle of the mystery of the world's creation. He discovers and solves the abstruse talisman, which is the mystery of the universe, and he provides convincing and satisfying answers to the three awesome and difficult questions that are asked of all beings and have always bewildered and occupied minds. Where do you come from? Where are you? What are you doing here? What is your destination?
Just the second part of the paragraph is explaining what the gist of the sermon is. So he's delivering a sermon, and the core message of his sermon is to address those questions that like solve the talisman of this universe.
So he says two different things. He solves and expounds the strange riddle of the mystery of the world's creation. So mystery of the world's creation. And then he says mystery of the universe. Why he separates these two?
I don't know.
Any ideas?
Isn't it the same thing? I think there is
To me, yes, it sounds like the same thing, explained different. So he says, first, he solves and expounds the strange riddle of the mystery of the world's creation. And then he solves, or discovers and solves, the mystery of the universe. Is he just saying the same thing, like again, to make the emphasis? Or because sometimes it does, like, use different words to say the same thing. But
I'm not sure if there's any subtlety in the meaning or it is the same thing, that just he's like doing it a different way.
And also mystery of universe, world's creation, mystery of the world's creation. Those are really kind of sounds like the topic of physics. Seriously, I was watching a documentary the other day by a very famous theoretical physicist, and he was talking about this like mystery. Like he kept repeating the word of mystery of universe, mystery of like world's creation. Exactly the same thing. And dark energy, dark matter, this and that. Like, but when you look at the prophet or Quran or something, like we always say that Quran is not the book of history. It's not a history book. It's not a chemistry book. It's not a physics book. But here he's talking about he's solving the mystery of world's creation or the mystery of universe. So the question maybe should be, what do we mean by mystery of universe? What is it? Is it like physical explanation are you looking for, or something else? My other question is, he keeps saying like he solves, he refers to Muhammad, right? Does he the one who's really solving those problems and giving answers, or the message? For example, if you put Quran or the revelation solves and expounds the strange riddle, makes perfect sense, right? Is it really him, or is it the message or revelation or wahi. What are you talking about here?
So, did Newton find the gravity?
Who?
Newton, gravity.
Yes.
So was it Newton that found the gravity, or gravity was revealed to him by someone? The message was given to him, but he declared the message to you.
He was able to,
Ask properly that the message was given to him, and you heard the message from Newton.
Okay, I know what you're saying.
So
Continue.
the revelation was given to the messenger, and we heard the revelation from the messenger. And for a purpose, revelation was given to the messenger, and he properly declared it to the mankind. So let's take it from Newton. We know that Newton worked hard. This is why he was given this message about how the mechanism of the universe is functioning. He was given the message, so it's not that he came up with the idea, he made the idea. He was given the idea. So the real guide in this sense is the creator of the message, which teaches us the gravity. But to us, we learned it through Newton. And for Newton, he asked it, so he was given that message for a purpose. In the same way, the messenger was given this message for a purpose. So as much as I'm indebted to Newton for gravity, I am indebted to Muhammad ﷺ for the message, because he was a person that is worthy of getting such a message. But this is for the relation between me and him. But when it comes to the message, yeah, definitely the message is coming from the creator of the heavens and the earth. But as he was saying, I cannot really separate the message and the messenger. So, because how am I going to think about message without the messenger? Because message comes to me through messenger, not only as a postman, as a man who was capable of understanding and receiving the message, so that he was given the message. And now he is translating the message to me with his life, with the way that he understood, the way that he behaved. Otherwise, I wouldn't maybe most likely receive the message, or another person would receive the message, but in the end, I would need someone to take the message and reflect it to me. If nobody else, I was supposed to be such a man.
This is actually very important. I just realized the example you gave, like the Newton. So when it comes to such advances, like scientific advances or your theoretical physicism, it is so easy to respect the guy. Like we automatically respect Newton. And I do respect, like he spent his entire time, like life, to come up with an explanation of something, a question he had. At the same time, as he was saying, we believe that whatever he came up with, he didn't create. It was just, given the idea, or he was bestowed with the explanation. But still, we take Newton as someone who lived the message, not only received the message like a postman, but we don't think Newton as postman. We think that he struggled a lot, he asked the questions, he made all these experiments, he read a lot of books, he studied with other people, and so on and so forth. Right? He devoted his life to receive the message. And then he received the message, he continued devoting his life to understand the message, to understand what it means, like law of gravity, or how motions of the objects relate to each other. He devoted himself, he studied the message, he explained to others the message he published, and we see Newton exactly just like I described here, right? So we don't take him as a postman. Like he found the message and delivered it to people. We don't take him like this. But when it comes to prophet, as Osman was warning last week, he was saying there's this tradition taking prophet just like a postman. He didn't even understand. He just conveyed the message. Maybe deep inside, we all, forget about this tradition, we all take him, at least to some certain extent, like this. He was a good guy, he was so clean, he deserved to carry the message, so the message was given to him. And then he was a just and fair and secure, trustworthy. He didn't bend the message. He conveyed the message as it is. And this is the most we think of him. We don't take him as a human being who strived for the message. He asked for the message for entire life. His entire life. Starting from his childhood. He tried to understand the creation reality. He made, quote unquote, the experiments. Like he made the observations. He came up with the formulas or equations, again, quote unquote. And then he was bestowed with the message. And then he tried to understand the message, lived himself the message. He tried to publish the message to teach others. Sometimes he realized there were some missing parts that he couldn't make sense. He asked again. There are such narrations, right? The people come ask about Ruh or three things. Elders of the Jewish tribes, they come and ask for three things. And he says, I don't know, let me ask my creator, Rab.
I remember the story, but I don't remember the detail.
Anyway, they were talented. Forget about the story, but I guess what matters is
this communication.
Yes, this communication. Like he was aware that there were more to explain, there were more to know, and he was asking, just like Newton did. And even maybe, not maybe, certainly, to an even further extent. So, again, as a self-critic, maybe we should take him more than just a postman. Just, let's say, more than a messenger. But someone who, as author says, solves and expounds the strange riddle of the mystery of the creation of the world.
So he was busy with those questions.
Exactly. So if Newton deserves to be said that Newton discovered the law of gravity, then he definitely deserves that he discovered and solved the mystery of the universe.
Then if you're busy with these questions, then revelation or prophet can, make a communication with you. Just like Newton, if you're into gravity, physics, then you can some sort of build a communication with Newton.
Exactly, yeah, great example.
If you're not into it, there is Newton. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with you and with your life.
Yeah.
That reminded me, you should know this story, but reminded me the discussion that I had with the 19-year-old Iranian guy in Iran when I traveled there. He was just someone that I met on the street. I asked an address, and we wanted to carry on the conversation. And all of a sudden, we found ourselves talking about prophethood. And he said, he's a 19-year-old guy. He said he doesn't believe that prophet Muhammad was God spoke to Muhammad. And okay, why do you think that? What do you think the Quran is then? And he said Muhammad was so clever, so smart, and he has done a lot of reflection and thinking that the Quran was his the product of his own reflections, his own intuitions. As it's like it opened up to him, he just recorded like his own like reflections and intuitions. So like until that point, to be honest with you, I never like thought about like prophethood, like or relationship between the message and the prophet that deeply. And I think like so it is another like thinking, right? It's another alternative versus prophet being just a message like the postman. So like the question is like there are like many alternatives and like what is the truth? Where is the right like spot to be? That's one thing. The other thing is it seems like an absolute creator speaking to a human being. It's like mind-blowing, and it is not really easy to comprehend what it really means or how it really takes place. Since it is difficult to understand or comprehend, like because of that, like there is this tendency also that like since we don't understand it, we tend to reject it, right? Like that, no, cannot be. But that's exactly what happened. Like here, like he like the absolute spoke to a creative being to address those like questions and solve the riddle of this creation. So what does that really mean? And how does that really take place? I guess like that is the like difficult part to understand for us. That's why like we just like then try to come up with some sort of explanation that will convince ourselves so we can like keep moving.
Yes, this might also be the problem. We are trying to understand the nature of
Speech.
Nature of speech, even more than that, what prophet experienced, more than what it means to me. I am interested in, I'm trying to explain what he exactly experienced. But it is like to me, it sounds like it's an impossible thing to really decide, unless I went through the same experience. But still, this doesn't mean that I cannot make sense of it at all. This is why Nursi is coming up with logical conclusions, saying that absolute must speak to men. How? I don't know. What I know is he must talk to me since he gave me the speech. So what did Prophet experience in the cave? What was he experiencing when the revelation was taking place? I don't know, and I cannot know. But does that mean that it cannot happen? This doesn't mean either, because I can logically arrive to the conclusion that God must speak to me in human language. So mixing the two, I'm thinking that if I cannot explain it to me about what he experienced, then I am inclining towards saying that then he didn't experience it either. So it must have been something like this and that. So trying to come up with a cover story, which comes with its consequences. Since now I am describing what he experienced with my experiences, then I can now open up a window to say that this is my verses. This was Muhammad's verses, now this is my verses. So it's like opening up new, coming up with consequences.
I wanted to add a few things here. So one thing I wanted to say was, what book is he referring to? Because I know it was said, well, he had, Nursi's saying he has the book in his hand. But, when I think of it, I think of it as Muhammad having the book of the universe in his hand. He has the entire cosmos wrapped up within the palm of his hand. As in, it's with him, it belongs to him, as it does to anyone for that matter, because it's given for each individual to comprehend and understand. So in that sense, he doesn't need to have the Quran in his hand at once, because he has it in a sense within the universe, or the universe itself. The Quran as the universe as a manifest Quran, so to speak, and he has that within his hand at any point, at any time, and he's able to comprehend it. There's no dichotomy. There's no separation between the mysterious question about how the universe works and the mysterious questions of its existence that Muhammad is trying to answer. In a sense, they're one and the same. So, one can say that he, in a sense, Muhammad, or his messengership, he has the answers to all those questions at an existential base. So even, while he may not have solved the abstruse mystery, the unsolvable mystery of the math behind, or the equations regarding the universe, in a sense, to me, he has, as it pertains to its essence, because that really is what everything looks towards. So to me, there is not a subject, so to speak, that one can study or investigate that does not involve his messengership. Whether it's science, math, or anything else for that matter. To me, it all relates, because he has the book of the universe in his hand, and what you're studying is the book of the universe in a sense. The last thing I was going to say was, oh yes, I forgot, but it was regards to what Yusuf brought up. What is revelation? I personally, I don't want people, if someone were to ask me, oh, how do you know it was revealed to him? You've never experienced revelation. How can you demonstrate that? At least to me, there is always an analogous representation within one's own personal life. Prophecy, while I may not receive divine revelation, in a sense, there's always an inner prophet within every one of us, because we can confirm prophecy. There's always an inner, Pharaoh and an inner Moses within all of us. Likewise, inspiration takes on the same form. We never think about those ideas or intuitions that suddenly appear within our intellect, within our thought process, and we attribute that to ourselves, never once thinking about the idea that where did this come from? How did it just appear to be in existence? Does that thought idea, as you were saying, Newton studied a question and he was revealed something regarding the universe. Had a question regarding gravity and he was revealed something. Likewise, any time we ever have an intuition or an idea that corresponds with the universe, in a sense, that is, I don't want to say a quote unquote divine revelation as we understand it, but it is in a sense a revelation. We may put it into our own words, which makes it our own by choice, but it's likened to that, and that's why, to me, I don't think any distinction can be made, because even somebody may say, oh, you don't know how is it possible that the creator of the universe spoke to Muhammad? Well, I can say, how is it possible that an idea appears within you? Have you ever thought about that? You don't even know the origin of that idea, that notion, or that feeling. It just happened, and you don't know where it came from, and you have nothing prior to that to explain its existence. So to me, that's how I understand these things that were brought up so far.
So there was a creed that you got disconnected, so maybe you already said this or maybe not, I don't know. I think it was really good that you wrote the point that like book may be referring to the universe itself. But at the beginning of this 19th verse, he talks about like there are three great universal things which make known to us the sustainer, our sustainer, the book of the universe, the speech, where was it?
The book of the universe, the other
Quran,
is the Quran of yes.
and the prophet. So if you just like take the universe only as the book, then I would just say that like those questions have been asked by all the philosophers throughout the history. So what makes like Muhammad like so special that actually his understanding of the like existence is true compared to the others? I think that's where like the speech or the revelation comes. So like it seems like those three are like inseparable, like prophet, the universe, the book of the universe, and like the speech or the revelation.
So that's the reason, I guess, the author says in his hand is a miraculous book, if you take it as universe, and on his tongue a truthful address. And these two are on him. So he's talking about all three together here.
Which was a point that I think needed clarification.
No, I would add to that and say to that, you know, it's like the example is always brought up. You know, you may not know how to speak another language, but in a way you do, as if you know it without knowing it. You just have never discovered it within yourself. So the difference between a philosopher and Muhammad, who, as you said, some people may take him as the philosopher king. Revelation is, in a sense, the answer he's looking for, but not the answer that he just comes up with. It's the answer corroborated by the one who provides him the question also. And to me, that's the distinction between that and philosophy, because philosophy is colored by, in a sense, by the answer we want it to be. We don't have any way to corroborate it. Or there's no way to say that this is what is externally true. You know, to me, that's the distinction. I agree with you. I'm not saying revelation is not important, but just because he doesn't have it all at once doesn't mean revelation is not with him anyway. Because in a sense, it's always there. It has not been uncovered completely at one point or another.
Any other comments? We have Faraz. He just joined, I guess, from Korea. He solves and expounds the strange riddle of the mystery of the world's creation. He discovers and solves the abstruse talisman, which is the mystery of the universe. And he provides convincing and satisfying answers to the three awesome and difficult questions that are asked of all beings and have always bewildered and occupied minds. Where do you come from? Where are you doing? What are you doing here? And what is your destination?
Thanks. Like you asked the question like about the riddle of the mystery of the world's creation and the mystery of universe. I looked at the original text. It seems like those are two different things that he refers to. But I am not really sure like what are the differences between the two.
Are you saying what is the difference between the riddle of the mystery of the world's creation and the abstruse talisman, which is the mystery that you're saying those are two different things?
Yes, like the question was why he has two different sentences. One is the mystery of the world's creation, and the other is about the mystery of the universe.
That reminded me the reason for the creation, for the universe to be created.
The reason for the creation.
Really relevant. It's like Prophet Muhammad being the reason for like the universe to be created.
So the first one sounds to me like it looks more to the act of creation. The second one looks to the existence itself. So the first one is why the things that are being created are being created. The second one is a deeper question of why do I exist in the first place? Because the act of creation, for example, why does he create sun? Sunrise, sunset. We can find meanings in those actions because we need to define meanings. Otherwise, life itself becomes very futile. You have a child, your child is born, or you are going to die. I mean, these are the things that are happening. And you ask the question why all these are happening, and you are trying to find meaningful answers for those questions.
Purpose. Yeah.
Purpose. And then there's also a more fundamental question of what is existence? What is the mystery of existence? At the very basis. And this is a much more fundamental question, Salman. Why does the existing things exist in the first place?
And then he says he provides convincing and satisfying answers to them. Convincing and satisfying answers to the three awesome and difficult questions. Where do you come from? What are you doing here? What is your destination?
You know, I want to say that, well, I don't know if he intended it, but convincing and satisfying to me means that convincing, logically speaking, why must something be, as Yusuf was saying, why is something as it is, and why isn't it not? So in a sense, it's speaking to logic, and satisfying, speaking to, as Yusuf was saying, you know, for what purpose am I here? What am I doing here? You know, what is my reason of even being? You know, in a sense, speaks towards the intellect and the heart, both at the same together.
Jazakallah khair. That was a nice point.
The reason that I was talking about existence is in the original language he is saying that the mystery of kainat, which is being. So like it goes very to the crux of kun. So I exist, things exist, why do they exist? So it's translated as the universe, but I guess using kainat or just beings or the existence would be a better fit for the text.
So what about these three questions? Are they just the questions that we always hear when it comes to mysteries? Or are those really questions that we constantly ask?
Throughout grad school, you keep asking this question. Why am I here? Where am I going to?
What the heck am I doing?
What is the purpose?
No, I personally have a hard time, you know, to remember these questions day to day, because, you know, at least me, modern society or culture is set up that it's well aware of these questions and it wants you to avoid asking them. So it occupies you with something to forget those questions, and then once you disengage or are not as preoccupied, you remember those questions, and it, in a sense, makes you depressed because you then begin to think of all the time and energy for which you measure up against the value of what you're doing with those questions, and you realize how there's a mismatch there. And you know, sometimes you feel helpless because you ask the questions and then you're like, can I do anything about them? Yeah, so personally, that's what I feel sometimes.
Yes, I really like the part when you say the mismatch. Like, because when we sincerely ask the question, when we are honest to ourselves, like what am I doing here? Or what am I going to be, or what is my destination? Most of the things I do becomes meaningless. Yeah, irrelevant. Like whenever I ask these questions in an honest state, I know that what I'm doing is not the answer. What I'm doing is not what is expected, let's say. Not from an external source, but I know it deep inside that this is not what I'm supposed to do.
And the other thing I was going to say is that, you know, you think about, you know, all the, let's say all the millions of billions of people that have come before or come after, and you think, well, they ask the same questions, and where are they now? You know, maybe they didn't know where they came from or what they were doing here, but where are they now? So then it really makes you seriously wonder, you know, exactly what is the value, because all the things you think you are doing that are of value, how much do they weigh up against? Do they have any weight against the weight of these questions? Particularly when you remember vast evidence in support of the value of these questions. You think about humanity entirely.
We may not ask these questions like out loud all the time, but I think those questions is always there, like innately we feel it. We may not like put in words, but they are always there with us, like, and it is innately we feel like we have that urge or need, or like it's always there. You may not speak of them, you may not like express them like in with words. They are always there. Like this workplace that I work, I see that even more so. I don't know why, but like I have only like met one person so far that actually said that he's actually like happy working there, and that he's fulfilled. And he's a 22-year-old Drexel grad engineer, and he has been working there for a year. And that's like when we had that conversation, it was like a few months ago. I said that yeah, like he really feels like fulfilled like by like what he's doing, because he thinks like he really does something really good for humanity, right? All the other people that I talk to, every single one of them, they complain about being there, but like at the end of the day, when they wake up in the morning, they have to come there. And this individual, I talked to him a couple days ago. There was some sort of issue, so I called him because it was in his area, and he tried to like avoid me. I'm like, no, you cannot avoid me. Like, you need to work on this thing. Like, so like what I'm trying to say is like, it just lasted a year. Maybe it's because of the new environment, out of school, like things that like, yeah, like achievements, learning a lot, like you get this kind of satisfaction. It just lasted a year. Which is normal.
You know, is that because of the work, or is it because of what, you know, I think about it because, you know, even the prophet worked, or his companions worked, and I get the feeling that they were more satisfied even if they worked more than what maybe the modern man works. And to me, it's because of the underlying assumption within society whatever you do doesn't have any sort of meaning. It's, in a sense, it only looks towards the thing you're accomplishing itself. It has no other meaning beyond that. And because that's transient, it can never really satisfy you. So even if you're a great thinker or a great scientist, even that may become stale, because what you're doing, you're thinking about, okay, I'm doing all of these things for what purpose? One day I'm going to get old and die, and so what? What does it even mean? And then you delude yourself into saying, oh, I'm helping people after me, or I'm doing something for someone else, not realizing that doesn't solve your problem, nor does it help them, because they're going to suffer the same fate you do. And to me, that's, I don't know if it's necessarily the work, but it's what the system is. Referencing a movie, like what the Matrix is, so to speak.
Perfect example, Matrix. Awesome. You want to say something?
I don't think it is really the work. It is like how we deal with the work. Like again, like if you really see the workplace as your provider, then like you will interpret everything else accordingly. Versus like if you know that like your provider is not the work, then your like interaction with the work itself, with the people working there, is going to be different. So it is our understanding and our expectations from it, I think, what makes the difference.
And to me, this is like where messengership comes in. Isn't that, as you guys were saying, people think he's just a he's just a postman. He delivers something and he leaves. But in a sense, I'm not saying he's a scientist, but in a sense he is. He's like the scientist with you, or he is like the engineer with you, or he's like the writer with you, in that he informs you what you're doing, what is really the reason you're doing what you're doing, what is the purpose of what you're doing, is there anything there? And to me, this is the tragedy of people's understanding of messengership, is that he is only understood as much as the person comprehends messengership to be. That's in a sense what the hadith are. They're just a comprehension to the degree of what someone perceives someone else to be. If he thinks of them as a postman, that's what he relates to you as. That's what he relates to the people. That's his the degree to which he transmits his understanding of messengership. And really, the fault is not with messengership; it's with the person who perceives his messengership. That's who limits his comprehensiveness.
Any other comments?
I have a quick question. What do you guys understand when you read pre-eternal sermon in the middle?
He's delivering a pre-eternal sermon to all mankind.
Yeah.
Absolute speech.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
In that it's comprehensive, and that it encompasses innumerable meanings that cannot be, the depth of which cannot be completely understood. So it's applicable to all people in all times, and even then, people can't exhaust its meaning. No matter to what angle they look at it, as from the words, as Nurse says, the letters, the structure, what it says itself in all aspects.
So, just I would like to put this third droplet into perspective again. Just to repeat the last week, the author was going to listen to the messenger, him being one of the evidences, or one of the teachers. And then he started saying that before listening to him, let's start to get acquainted with him, get to know him. Because I'm going to take messages from him, but is he a reliable person? Is he a trustworthy person? So this is what he is doing. And in the third droplet, he went to this Arabian Peninsula, just emphasizing a certain geographic location, and saying that era of bliss, a certain time. But then he said that within this certain geography and certain time, he came up with this message with which he was able to solve those questions which were not solved before. And the message that he came up with is not limited with the location he came or the time he came. And he is giving this as a evidence to say that he is a trustworthy person, he is aware of what he is saying, and what he says is very much applicable to me and it makes sense to me. So he is worthy of being listened to. This was the purpose of, and very briefly, the third droplet.
The reason I actually had that question was because I was wondering, am I convinced and am I satisfied with the answers to these three questions? And generally, I'm not. I'm really not. So I was trying to read, here it says, if he doesn't say he solved in the past, like maybe that's on purpose, he uses the present tense, he solves. Because I guess if it's a pre-eternal sermon, then you're constantly questioning, and that sermon constantly keeps speaking to me, then I guess in that way it is solving. It's like a process.
Provides convincing and satisfying answers.
Apparently it's not satisfying him.
No, again, so this is really important because as we discussed from the beginning, like everybody, at least apparently, tries to solve these questions or try to solve the mystery of the universe, as you were saying, like this theoretical physics. But according to most of the people, and ironically enough, according to most intelligent people, the solutions they find, the solutions they come up with, they don't have to be convincing or satisfying at all. If math says so, it is so. If their equations leads to some conclusion, then it has to be true. That is the usual way they approach. Again, they also want us to follow their explanations, even though it doesn't make sense, and even though they are not convincing. This is how they start, for instance, teaching certain physical concepts. Like when you open a quantum physics book, the first sentence you will see always is forget about how you experience the world. Forget about your intuitions, because what I'm going to teach you will be opposite of your intuitions and your experiences. But this is the world as it is. Why? Because our calculations say so. I'm not objecting what I discover, what they discover, what they teach, because I'm not in such a place. But this attitude is completely opposite of what he's saying. Like it says, a message, if you want to follow, a solution to the mystery of the universe, if you want to follow, must be something that you can be convinced and satisfied. Otherwise, even if you say, yes, I can prove it by some derivations, some calculations, it won't satisfy you.
it won't convince you. So this is really interesting. Like these two criteria, that being satisfactory and convincing. Although it sounds like, you just mentioned it to, like as if, yes, we know that it has to be convincing and satisfactory, but actually not. Like most of the answers given to us, they say, oh, you don't have to understand.
After one question, like
If Faraz want to say something, but if you finish first, please.
I was just gonna ask a question to Akrama. So like not satisfied like in terms of the message or in terms of the prophet, or like all in general.
All in general. And the reason, sometimes, yes, you are satisfied. Sometimes you question and then you find satisfaction. But generally, the reason you do question, and this is constantly questioning, is because you're not satisfied with the answers. Like, for example, where do you come from? I was created. I understand nothing about that. Or what am I doing here? Like there's verses like you're here to worship or something. Maybe sometimes it makes sense. Usually it doesn't. Where's my destination? I don't really understand that either. Sometimes, yes, I can be convinced and satisfied. But it's not something I solve and it's just solved. Like, I don't think he just solved it and I can take that answer. Somehow he's just, it's a pre-eternal sermon. That's how I understand it. He's constantly speaking to me in some way with his message, and sometimes I see the light, and usually I don't.
This makes perfect sense to me. So, Faraz want to say something, so you don't? Okay. Faraz, go ahead, please.
Yes. So what I was going to say actually, what Abdul Rahman was saying, I think Abdul Rahman, it kind of goes along with it. So I guess, and previously I wanted to say, so I'll try to connect these 2 points. When we say, I have a question, but I don't know, I'm not aware of it, or people have questions, but they don't have these questions, or we say, but these are fundamental questions, existential questions, and why aren't people, do they have these questions, but they are, because there's no answers, there's dissatisfaction. And so what about that, what I want to say, what I think, I may be wrong, what I think is, if these truly are existential questions, and I think that they are, it is not possible that I have these questions and yet I'm not looking for answers, or that that doesn't bother me that I don't have answers. So I think the more likely reason people don't ask these questions or don't is because they have some sort of answers. They think they have some sort of answers to them. But those answers may not be satisfactory, and that brings to Abdul Rahman's point, what is a satisfactory answer? So in my life, when I feel and think with all my capacities as a human being, insofar as a human being I'm concerned, I understand, I know where I am coming from. I understand why I'm here, what I'm doing here. And I understand where I'm going. I'm satisfied with all of these 3 basic questions, then I'm satisfied that, in that moment or in that way. But if I say I have all these questions, I know what the Prophet said, I know what the Quran says, I repeat it. But in my life, in my actions, in my interactions, in what I say, how I feel, and we can't know this about people until you really know somebody closely, if that person's actions imply, nobody comes out, rarely people come out, and sometimes they say rarely to close friends, but rarely people come and say, I don't know what I'm doing in this world. Like these kind of crises, people don't really share all the time or articulate this way, but in their day-to-day life, in my day-to-day life, you can look at it, I can see I'm acting as if I don't really know why I'm here. I'm feeling, I'm interacting with things as if I don't really know why I'm here. And where is this coming from, where I'm coming from, where I'm going. I don't know. It's not satisfying. Which means I have some sort of false answers. And so I think the only time we don't have these questions when we have false answers for them. And how we know they're false is it manifests as dissatisfaction about where I am, about what I'm doing, about where I'm going. So for me, these false answers come from two things. One, I didn't actually go to the Prophet's message to get the answers to these. I went elsewhere. I went, I say, where do you come from? I come from Pakistan, or I'm this or that ethnicity, or I'm a human being, or, what are you doing here? And I have answers to that I got from society, that I even got from religion. I'm here to worship. So I didn't take this answer from the Prophet as a satisfying in a way that I will understand the evidence for its truth. I just took it and I repeat it, and it's not satisfying that. So in either case, either I don't go to the Prophet's message, or when I go, I don't read it as something that I should understand and come to the conclusion that I do understand it so that it satisfies. In both these cases, I'm walking around with false answers, and therefore I don't feel satisfied about what do I. So that's what Abdul Rahman was saying. I think saying I want to also agree that it's not about I'm not satisfied about him being a prophet or not, or I'm not satisfied about what the satisfaction I think is about is whether I know where I am, whether I know what I'm doing here, and that is what I should be doing, and I know I understand where I'm going, and it makes sense to me as a human being. So I think as long as I don't feel satisfied about life, now to summarize these three questions, when I say I'm not satisfied about life, about what I feel, what I do, what I think is happening, things are not, according to me, perfect, absolutely, your pre-eternal address. And I think Suhail made it comprehensive. It means nothing is left out. So left out of what? Nothing is, in my view, left ununderstood. So, one way to say it, it's absolute speeches that I cannot understand the depth of it. That's from a perspective that's not my human perspective. From my perspective, what I understand, comprehensive speech or the final speech, or all I need is that when I as a human being feel all aspects of existence that I needed to have meaning, now have meaning. There's nothing left unexplained, mysterious, or without meaning in my world. So about this speech, which makes this possible, I will say, this is absolute, because it leaves nothing out. Nothing is left in the dark anymore in terms of my basic questions of why I'm here, what I'm doing. So I feel I love the Prophet too much. I revere his religion too much to actually, I therefore love to say, yes, I agree. I love the Prophet's message. I agree with it. And in so doing, I never actually go to the Prophet and listen to the address and ask, is it satisfying to me? And as a result, I walk around with unsatisfactory false answers to those questions. Those questions are there, and I don't feel them as questions because I have falsely answered them. So I am in the illusion that I have. If I break that illusion, immediately I will feel the force of those questions again. And so I really need to ask myself, am I satisfied? And I don't know, I think there's people we are too afraid to ask. We said, I don't know why. I think people feel that if they ask this, there'll be no satisfaction. They assume that if they actually look for, they feel it's selfish to do so. Who am I to feel satisfied? You know, I am just a nafs and I am misled and so on and so on. But I never actually go and really say, I want answer to these questions, not from society, not from religion, and that's important, I underline for myself, not from religion, but from my maker, from his speech. I think that's from the message, like that's key, because religion, as we understand it, is no longer this message satisfying, who said I need to understand is satisfying answering questions. It's a lot of things. It's reverence, it's love of the Prophet, it's being willing to die for the Prophet's love, etc., etc. So it's, so I don't know, that's what just my comments.
Whereas I think like the reason why we don't ask those questions, like whether we are satisfied or not, I feel like in my experience, not asking those questions and accepting Prophet like feels, I don't know if it feels or it sounds like more pious.
With questions you referring to, am I satisfied?
Am I satisfied, like whether, like for example, whether he's a prophet or not?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I satisfied whether, like, whatever he addresses, however he addresses those questions and what his answers are really satisfying for me or not? So there is, like, I feel like there is this almost like false piety in that. And also, saying that, like, no, like, I am not satisfied with this answer, most of the time it is taken as if, like, you are challenging God or challenging Prophet, like, whereas, like, you just simply stating the fact that you're not satisfied. So, like, that's how I feel that's what, like, what it really boils down to. Like, that's the underlying, like, kind of root cause why, like, tend to kind of cover it up, because one, it like sounds like more like asking the question and like looking for an satisfying answer. Sounds like it's more like a challenging, like almost like arrogant approach, and just accepting is more pious way of approaching it.
Any other comments? Questions? Rejections? Before we start the fourth droplet?
I have a question to Faraz actually. He said, if I have a false answer, then I won't have these questions. So does that mean that the reality is you should always be questioning this, and you should never have an answer in any way?
Before that, Faraz says, yes, I agree, Osman. He says. But yeah, okay. Let's go with your question.
Yeah, so Abdurrahman, yeah, so what I want to say is that it doesn't make sense to me to say that I have a question and I don't have an answer for it, and yet I don't feel the need to ask the question. Because if I grant this, it means I can have a question and not have an answer, not any answer for it, and still not feel the need for a question. That makes having a question or not having a question kind of mysterious and out of my control. Either I have it or I don't have it. Whether I not have an answer for it, it makes no difference. But what I want to say, it makes a difference. A question is only a question, or only ceases to be a question if there has been some answer to it. And if I say with my tongue that I have an answer, but in my being, I feel dissatisfied, but I say, but, and I live this dissatisfaction, and I don't have, feel the need to question anything. I just not happy, not satisfied. Then it's not that I don't have the question. It means I should say I have faulty and false answers that I have given to these questions. And I should ask, where did I get those answers? Did I go directly to the speech of the maker of this universe, or someone who this maker sends, and from this one I will get? So when I read Bismillah Rahman Rahim, I don't say this is a pious formula for me to repeat. I say, is this an answer that can satisfy my question of why I'm here in the world? So, or whatever else, whether I'm reading the Bible, whether I'm reading the Veda, doesn't matter. As far as, to me, as far as I am saying, I want the speech of my maker to address this question, then I should go there with this question. For this, that's why I need to first say what kind of answers I have given to these questions that I don't feel satisfied. I have the questions, but the reason for my dissatisfaction is false answers. That's why if someone is not willing to ask and question their current answers to these questions and where they got them, and they're not willing to stop taking them as answers, you cannot feel the force of the question again, because as long the question is attached to an answer, you cannot feel the force of the question. So you have to say, I have to say, no, this answer is false. No, it stopped being an answer. Now the question became free of an answer. So now it became a real question. And now with this question, I should go to the messenger. I feel we don't go to the messenger with this question. We feel we go with these questions to society. Our society has already answered these questions, and we repeat them, we take them. Or we go to religion, we go somewhere, and ultimately we feel, or we don't feel satisfied, although I have the answer, but it's not satisfactory. But that's all there is to it. This is what religion gives. And I feel we need to question what these answers I have been given, do I understand from them? And if I don't, where should I go to understand? I think the text is saying, if it makes logical sense that if I want something, an answer that satisfies completely all aspects without leaving anything out, then it must be from the speech of the one who made everything, the absolute maker. And this absolute speech should be the one that I approach in seeking this answer. I don't know if that answers what you were trying to ask, but I just restated what I stated earlier, I think.
Thank you, that's more clear.
Abdurrahman's question reminded me what you shared a while ago, Faraz. The author was talking about being carried by the passion, emotions. And the way you interpreted the paragraph was, as far as I remember, being open to new answers or new truths. So when you have some answers to some questions, which I guess like every healthy people or person does so, like when we have questions, we look for answers, and sometimes we find some answers, but then something urges you, like your passion, your desires, your emotions, tries to take you somewhere else. So you should be kind of open to discover new truths if you are not satisfied. So this satisfaction, if we take it as your guide, this satisfaction or not being convinced should lead you to new answers. You should look for new answers if you are not satisfied with the answers that you already have.
Have a quick count.
There's one comment, let me
No, yeah, okay. It does connect to the text I sent. It says, okay. What's this?
Since we are studying the prophethood itself, and finding answers for your for our existential questions, whether we should just answer is there once and we are convinced, or it's a continuous process. I always find very interesting initial revelation process, when Prophet Muhammad receives the revelation, he gets so scared that when he comes back home from the that's his narration, right, from the mountain, he's trembling. And he says cover me, right? And that is the initial revelation. And after that, there's a period, I think it's 2-3 years, I'm not so sure, but there's a long period of time that no more revelation comes. I find that period very interesting. That to me, I think I read somewhere what you were saying, that was the period that for Prophet Muhammad was it was a period for him to believe in his own messengership. So he is the direct adversary of the Creator, right? And he is receiving the revelation. But yet, he was given 2-3 years period of time to be fully satisfied and convinced with the fact that he is not. I believe there is even some verses saying that he is not delusional, and this is not in some sort of imagination or delusion. This is the truth. So he needs that time period to, in a way, internalize the initial revelation that he is the messenger of God. And then when the next revelation comes, he says, get up and warn people. I think that was the verse came after that period. The first verse came after that period. So it is a process, and it's a continuous process. And if you think about the overall time frame, that he delivered the message 23 years, and 3 years out of that 23 was that initial period that so if you, I think overall if you compare that 3 years to the overall his mission, it's a very long time frame. It's not 3 years out of 100. It's 3 years out of 23.
Any other points, Abdurrahman? No, your questions are pretty good, actually.
I am now
Leading to
digesting.
discussions. One point just I want to emphasize, I really liked going to Prophet, as I was saying, when we have a question, asking this question to the Prophet, that was something new for me. It puts Prophet in our life as a living being somehow. I don't know what he really meant, but the way I understand is your way or path to find the answers will change from one person to another person. It will change. The way we reach to the Prophet, it will change. Some will try to read narrations, they had it. Some will try to read Nusi, trying to find the message of the Prophet there. Some will do something else. But I guess the point is your intention, your attitude should be, whatever you are studying or whatever you are doing, it should be reaching to the Prophet. It shouldn't be finding some answers from some people's ideas. Or it shouldn't be trying to find the answers, I don't know, your own answers, or just discovering something. Your intention should be reaching the Prophet, who was once addressed by the absolute creator of the universe. So that should be your attitude, intention. This is what I understand. Like when you read Nursi, try to find profit there in his writings. Otherwise, if you think a sentence, it's just Nursi's own idea. I mean, it makes sense. But when you think of one sentence, it's there to teach you about the Prophet. This sentence should be taken different than the other one. This is what I understand. So we have 12 minutes. So let's start for Droplet. Let's start. Any objections? No? Okay. Yusuf, would you like to use Yusuf? Please?
They have comments verses from the online parts.
Yeah, good question. Is there any comments or questions before we start the fourth Droplet from online participants? Okay, no. Let's at least read the fourth Droplet. Aisha, would you like to read? No? Okay. Just a second. See, he spreads such a light of truth that if you look at the universe as being outside the luminous sphere of his truth and guidance, you see it to be like a place of general mourning and being strangers to one another and hostile and inanimate beings to be like ghastly, is it ghastly? Yeah. Like ghastly corpses and living creatures like orphans weeping at the blows of death and separation. And believe me, he's not exaggerating at all. Like this is really, at least recently, how I feel when I read all these textbooks. Being strangers to one another, the hostile, inanimate beings to be like ghastly corpses, living creatures like orphans weeping at the blows of death and separation. This is exactly how I feel when I read textbooks. Especially nowadays because I'm working on the things related to psychology, psychiatry, and so on. All the explanations which goes back to genes and stuff, which I don't, again, reject the horizontal relationships between them. If there is such a relationship, there is, I don't care. But the way it is taken, genes taken as enemies, that we, somehow have to find a way to conquer, to defeat. Everything in the universe being an enemy to, all these inanimate beings, enemy of the corpses like us, with just wandering around. This is exactly how they describe the universe. And this is how we see the universe. We are afraid of even tiny things. It will, harm me and I will die. This is how we live the universe, the life.
I also feel like it goes to the purpose of what the universe is, right? If you don't think about why are we here, going back to the fundamental questions that human beings have that we were discussing. I mean, that's the view that one can easily develop because it will be meaningless, purposeless. There is no purpose in what the existence of this universe means. And that's how it becomes the universe seems dead, it comes and it goes, that's it. Right? Everything seems very, they seem like enemies of each other when they are very purposefully being, arranged.
Oh, there's Faraz. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I hadn't read this part before, but I think this is speaking to this idea of the pre-eternal address and why this address, what it should accomplish, what I expect from this address to do. from the one that comes, and what kind of address I need. And it reminded me just recently, I read my friend's wife is very, very ill and, going through a very serious operation, maybe lives, maybe dies, they don't know. And one person is asking for prayers for this other person, and she says, please keep praying. You never know when God is listening. So she said, keep praying because you never know when God is listening. It's interesting comment. Of course, on the very face value of it, it sounds ridiculous. But if you think about it, what makes somebody says this, and do we not all kind of, if we find ourselves that some aspect of this world, something is happening in this world, which is not fully illuminated, which is not a friend and a brother, which is not reciting, which is not a place of the God's praises and names being recited in joy and ecstasy. If this is not what I see there, then I'm not satisfied about why am I here, what this world is about, where it's going. And what I need is, although this person mentions God and she says, Inshallah, mashallah, inshallah, God will do this, inshallah, God will do this, inshallah, something will do this. But her words betray her, and it's not her, like the society, the people, you and I, we say God all the time, inshallah, mashallah. And yet there are corners of this world that mourn and that have no light. There are, in my life, there are many corpses and orphans weeping, etc., etc. So that is where I need to say, it is a question, it is a weeping. My saying this or my wanting to believe is not helping me. I need to understand the message. The maker of this event should speak. And so that's why I look for the messenger, so that I can get the meaning of this, which is not illuminated in my life. And once all such corners are illuminated, I say this is comprehensive guidance. This is comprehensive truth. So anyway, just recently I heard this statement by her, and it just haunts me. It comes to me and says, what does that mean? That, maybe sometimes God listens. Other times, things are, He's not listening. Things are happening. I don't know.
Interesting point. Indeed. Any other comments? So, yeah, he describes the life without being illuminated by the message. And then now he describes what happens when it is illuminated. Through the light he spreads, that place of universal mourning has been transformed into a place where God's names and praises are recited in joy and ecstasy. The fallen hostile beings have become friends and brothers, while the dumb, dead, inanimate creatures have all become familiar officials and docile servants. While reading, I just realized, again trying to put the fourth droplet into context, the bigger picture. He was talking about different aspects of the prophet, right, to make him known to us. Now he gives a kind of recipe for us that we can try. Like he says, this is your state before hearing his message, isn't it? He asks. And I say, yes, this is how I see the world. And he says, and this is what you see when you listen to his message. And ask, isn't that the case? Like, don't you think after hearing his message, looking at the creation through the glasses of his message,
don't you see that everything reciting God's names and praises Him? So this is something like we can experience firsthand. Not that we do necessarily, but we can. Something we can try, we can be convinced, and we can be satisfied.
There are two perspectives here. One, Quranic, prophetic perspective, as we look through the leaf, the lenses of leaf. One with eye. Up to individual, which path he wants to take.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم آخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين.